It's quite easy to do laundry while traveling, but once the things are wet, I find it more challenging to find a place where I can hang my things up, especially when I'm staying in a small hotel room. And over the last few years of traveling almost non-stop and just living out of a small carry-on backpack, I had to get creative quite a few times. So in today's video, I wanted to share with you 6 tips that help me to dry my clothes while traveling. So tip number 1 is to pick the right kind of clothes. In terms of drying, what I usually try to find is clothes that dry fast, and usually I tend to pick thinner fabrics because I like to layer them, and then of course they also have the benefit of drying faster. And there is one very simple test that I always like to do to see if my clothes are really quick drying, because not everything that is marketed as quick drying is actually quick drying, and that is just to do a wash test. So what I usually do is I just hand wash it in the sink like I would usually do, and then just hang it up to dry and see how fast my clothes will dry. And I usually keep them inside the house and not outside, because inside they dry slower. And after a while I just see which things actually got dried and which are still wet. And depending on that, I pick the clothes that I bring with me. I already did a video where I talked about my favorite kinds of fabrics that I choose for my travel clothes, and I will link it below. Tip number 2 is to remove as much water as possible after washing it. And especially when you hand wash, it's sometimes a little bit challenging because you should not wring the clothes too much. So I try to gently squeeze out as much water as possible while it's still in the sink. Afterwards, I usually get a big towel to dry them even further. I just put the towel flat on the bed and I spread my things on it, and then I just roll it all up and gently squeeze it to get as much water out as possible. And when you're in a hotel and you only have one towel, sometimes it's a little bit challenging, especially if you already had a shower that day or, like me, washed your long hair and the towel is wet. But I notice it even helps a little bit to squeeze it in a wet towel to get out a little bit of the moisture. And you can also always politely ask at the hotel if they can give you another towel or just exchange your wet towel for a dry one. If the garment is too wet, I usually hang it into the shower until it stops dripping. And I use 2 S-hooks, and I will show them to you in a second. But I basically hang the wet thing inside, and then it will start to dry from the top, but all the water will run to the bottom. So I always go there regularly and just squeeze out the bottom parts. And once it's dry enough and stops dripping, I usually remove it from the bathroom and put it into the hotel room, because in the bathroom there's often a higher humidity and then it would take much longer to dry. Tip number 3 is to find proper places to hang your things in a small hotel room. And the most obvious one are clothes hangers if you have. So they're perfect to hang up t-shirts to dry, and usually I just hang them back into the wardrobe. But if it's a wardrobe with a door, then just make sure that you keep the doors open. If there is a clothes rail, then I often just hang my things over it. I also use things like open bathroom doors to hang things over the top, or furniture. But more often than not, the space in a hotel room is limited, which brings me to my next tip. So my next tip is to bring some helpful gear. And I have a few things that I always pack that don't take up too much space or weight in my luggage, but they are extremely useful when I want to dry my clothes. And because I often get asked to provide links, I will have them in the description. The first thing I always bring are 2 of those S-hooks. And for me, they're very useful to hang up little things like underwear, or also 2 of them to hang up pants. The next things that I always bring with me are in this little pouch. And what I have in here are just a few clothespins and a few of those very small bags. And I often find them very useful to hang up things like underwear and socks. And what I would do most of the time is just take 2 socks and then take here the middle part and just connect it with a clothespin or a bag, and then I can just hang it over a rail or over any other suitable place like this. I mean, of course, I could just hang them like this on a rail, but since the space on the rail is usually very limited, this gives me double the amount of drying on the same space. The next item is my favorite addition to my kit this year, and that's this Night Ice gear tie, which is just a flexible piece of metal coated with some plastic, I guess. And I find it extremely useful, not just for laundry, but in terms of drying things, I found a few different uses. So the first one is that I can just use it really as a makeshift hanger. So for my more lightweight t-shirts, it works quite well to just hang them up in the room. So my husband's t-shirts are a little bit more heavy than mine, so for his t-shirts it tends to bend back, but he just puts it back in position every once in a while. But if you have some lightweight clothes, I think it's always worth a try. I often form hooks with it in all variations, so if I just hang it over somewhere, I can just form hooks like this and use it to dry my underwear. Sometimes I also make a hook like this first to put over the door, and then like this to hang up things. And sometimes I just use this thing as the rail. And the last item that comes with us on all trips is this packable clothesline from Sea to Summit. It's 3.5 meters long, but you can make it shorter if necessary. And we use it a lot to hang up our things in hotel rooms. Also, when you're staying in hostels, it works very well in bunk beds, and we used it a lot when we walked the Camino de Santiago recently. And another feature that I like very much is, especially when you use it outside, it's basically 2 lines that run parallel, and there's some beads on it that you can rearrange. And if you put your clothes between those 2 lines and then zip it closed with the beads, then you don't necessarily need any more pegs or something if you hang up your clothes outside and it's a very windy day. And those 4 things I find extremely helpful when I want to dry my things. Tip number 5 is to speed up drying, and there's a few things you can do to dry your clothes faster. So the first tip is, if you can, don't fold your clothes in half and hang them over stuff like this. Hang them up like single, like this, then they will dry usually faster. Also try to increase the airflow, and we usually do that by turning on the air condition and trying to hang our things in the direction where the air condition is going. Another option is to use a small ventilator, and if you've seen some older videos of me, you know how much I love my little Arctic ventilator. And this little thing saved us in so many hot nights, and also with our laundry, because it just gives a little bit of a breeze. And unfortunately, Arctic does not produce them anymore. So this year I decided to buy their newer version, which unfortunately is quite a lot bulky, but I think it's still pretty packable. And contrary to the other one, I can charge this one with USB-C, and it's a little bit more powerful, and I will just bring it with me on travels when I go by car. I'm not sure if I would fly with it, but I'm hoping for the day that they will bring out this version with a USB-A, and then I will immediately buy it. Another way to speed up drying times is to use heat. So if you have a radiator in your room, check if you're able to cover it, and when in doubt, maybe ask the reception about it. So the radiators we have around here are usually run with hot water and not with electricity, so we're able to cover them. But if you cannot cover it, then it already helps to put your clothes closer to the heat. Another thing that works very well is if you have one of those towel radiator racks in the bathroom. And you can also sometimes use the hairdryer, but use it with caution and don't leave it unattended. But the easiest way to speed up drying time is to hang up your stuff outside if you can, for example on a balcony. And for that, usually this clothesline is extremely useful. I always like to use a laundry timer app, which knows my location and the weather, and then it calculates the drying time. I can also set the timer, and then it will notify me when my things should be dry. Another feature of this app that I really like is that it gives me a prevision of the drying times for the next 3 days. I think for the whole week you need to watch one ad, and that's very useful to see on which days it's more suitable to do laundry. I'm on the free version and it's available for iPhone and Android. And if you want to know what other apps I really enjoy using while traveling, I already did a video about that and I think you should watch that. Tip number 6 is to wash less and do it more often, because all of those things before, in my opinion, get much easier when you do it with less clothes at once. The towels you use to dry will be less wet. It's much easier to find spaces to hang it up in the room. So I always try to wash every night or every other night. And another benefit of that is that I don't need to bring that much clothes because all my things are constantly washed and clean again. Hello everyone! I just noticed I have actually a bonus tip for you. Every once in a while when you're traveling to a very humid climate, or if your clothes just don't get dry fast enough, they can start smelling like wet clothes, and doesn't matter how often you wash them, you won't get rid of it. In that case, what usually helps is to just use a powdered laundry detergent, because they're formulated differently and they get rid of all those smells. I hope that helps. So now if you're saying, well Maggie, now I know how to dry my clothes, but how should I wash them? I already did a video about that as well, and I will link it below. If you have any other tips that you use to make drying easier while traveling, leave them below. I always find it very interesting to read, and I think it also helps lots of other travelers. If you enjoyed this video, then consider signing up for my monthly newsletter or to my channel. And other than that, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye!